Hey guys, we are on day 89 in our Bible reading plan, and today we are starting out in the book of Judges. Now, we're going to read chapters 1 and 2, and these two chapters are going to serve as a bit of an introduction for the rest of the book. We're going to read in chapter 1 all of the ways the Israelites failed to completely drive out the inhabitants of the land as they took possession of the land that the Lord was giving them. So in chapter 1, we're going to read over and over again. We're going to read things like Judah doesn't drive out the inhabitants of the plains. Benjamin doesn't drive out the Jebusites. Manasseh didn't drive out the Canaanites. Joseph spares a man and his family. Ephraim does not drive out the Canaanites. Neither did Zebulun. Neither does Asher. Neither does Naphtali, nor does Dan. Dan fails to take the hill country. And so we're going to read throughout this whole chapter how Israel sort of half-heartedly went in and took over the land and didn't completely drive out the inhabitants of the land as they were commanded by the Lord to do. And then when we get into chapter 2, we're going to read in chapter 2, verse 7, that the people served the Lord throughout the entire lifetime of Joshua and the elders who outlived him, who had seen all that the Lord had done. But once this generation passes away, we read in verse 10 that another generation grew up who neither knew the Lord nor had seen all the great things that the Lord had done. And chapter 2 is also going to describe the sin redemption cycle that we see throughout the entire book of Judges, where the Lord grants Israel peace. He blesses them as long as they're following him and walking according to his ways. And then as they enjoy that time of peace and prosperity, we see Israel begin to adopt the ways of the nations that were left in the land. They adopt their practices for worship, they follow after idols, they worship idols, and they start behaving in ways that as the people of God, they were not called to live in these ways. And so we see that they start to sin, they start to fall away from the ways of the Lord, and the Lord gives them over to the consequences of that. And when things finally get bad enough, Israel cries out to the Lord hears their cry, he relents, he raises up a judge to deliver them from the oppression of the nations around them. And then they have peace in the land as long as that judge is ruling over them. And we're going to see this cycle at work over and over and over again. That is why chapter 1 and 2 of this book are so important, because we can understand as we read through the rest of this book that this is a community of people that the Lord had called to be different, to be set apart, to be separate. And when they went into the land, they were meant to completely get rid of all of the inhabitants so that their ways and their lifestyle and their culture didn't dictate or influence their worship of their God, because their God had called them to remember him, to remember his commands, to worship him in a certain way, and to live in their community in a certain way. And we're going to see that they're not going to be able to do that over and over again. And for me today, as I was reading, the thing that really just stood out to me was this call to remember that what God has done, all of the things that that generation that passed away had seen and knew to be true of the Lord, to remember those things, to teach them to our children so they don't forget, and to remember all that he commands so that we don't forget. That call is a safeguard for our hearts. It's a safeguard for our hearts, and it's a way that we can honor God the way that he deserves and desires to be honored in this world. So that was just a bit of an encouragement to me. God has given them everything that he requires. He's laid it all out for them. And over and over again, when they fall and when they struggle and when they fall into hardship, he is faithful to answer them, even though they haven't been faithful to the call to remember him. We serve a merciful and compassionate God who loves us, who just desires that we would turn to him. It was true for them in the book of Judges, and it's still true for us today. I hope that encourages you, and I hope you have a great day.